Excuse me, but do you got some Indian in you? Now I know you not all black, 'cause you got that good hair too. Now was that a statement or a question? 'Cause I can tell by your reflection that your perceived perception has rejected my complexion. Like since I'm not cocoa brown, then I'm disqualified, raped in my heritage and my blackness denied. Do you feel like there's a discrimination between light-skinned and dark-skinned blacks?
And sometimes with the way people view certain lifestyles and some things that are portrayed in education and the media and stuff like that, I feel that there can be some type of dissent between fair-skinned African Americans, darker-skinned African Americans.
At times, I think we as people are often, surround ourselves around others that are similar to us. So at times, you might have some dark-skinned blacks discriminating against light-skinned blacks, or light-skinned blacks discriminating against dark-skinned blacks. I think it's all based upon stereotypes that derive from like slavery and has been used to keep us apart as a people.
Well, I do sometimes. It depends on where you're at in the world. Down south, they treat light-skinned people like whites, and sometimes light-skinned people like blacks. It depends on what family they from, either the white or the black side. Light-skinned people take a lot of heat nowadays since the dark-skinned people back in style, you know what I'm saying? That's how it is. I remember back in the day, dark-skinned people was hated on all the time and they couldn't get no gals, but now, you know what I'm saying, we back in.
Yes, in some ways.
In what ways are those?
Well, I feel that there's discrimination in the workplace often in the United States. I feel that there's discrimination in literature. I feel like there's perceptual discrimination in terms of how people see people who are light-skinned, people who are brown, and people who are very dark-skinned. I think that, yes, there's certainly discrimination. Some's learned and some is just institutionalized into the different systems, a lot of the different systems in which we live.
I think that historically there has always been some measure of discrimination or sense of privilege or sense of distrust between different tone colors of black people. In some areas of the country and at some points in history it's been worse or better. But I think that you can find quite often in the Deep South, especially in areas like South Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, the great Creole societies that really were based pretty much on origin, ethnic background, and tone, so that you had distinctions between white, colored, and black, even in this country. And quite often, the free people of color were the lighter-skinned black people, and they obviously had privileges because they had freedom, economic stability, and in sometimes, even during the slavery period, they owned slaves. I think that this has come down in modern-day stereotyping, that the closer you are to your white ancestry, the more privileges you probably had, and the more acceptable you are to the larger white population, because they look upon you and think in the old-fashioned way that you are closer to being civilized the closer you are to the standard of white.
Most definitely is. I have seen it, witnessed it, and faced it all through life, even with my own family. My mother has a big issue with the brown paper bag test. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. When African Americans were put up against a paper bag, and that determined what type of job they were going to have, and this, that, and the third. And my mother always used to tell me that I was the perfect complexion because I would be able to pass that test. I see it every day, in terms of some lighter skinned African Americans getting the jobs more, or they're getting different privileges because they're lighter than a dark skinned African American. So I most definitely believe that there is discrimination and a bias between darker skinned and lighter skinned African Americans.
So have you been discriminated against by light-skinned people?
By light-skinned people, I can't really think of a time. I'm sure it goes on, whether in who people decide to be friends with, who they decide to talk with, but nothing personally. I think the only thing I can really remember when I was little, because I think that was the only time I was conscious of it, so conscious, so self-conscious about it, was when I was little. Now that I'm older, I kind of don't care. But when I was little, I remember my friend, I asked her, I was like, why is there all these light-skinned girls in videos? And she said, well, because light-skinned girls are prettier. So that was actually the only time I had the, like, discrimination. And being a young child, that's really kind of devastating.
Jokingly, yes. They say, you know, you white, you know, you're not one of us. But I don't belong in the white group either. So when I actually try and fit in with the blacks, they say, well, you white, you can't, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
A lot of times it's just that I feel sort of discriminated, but more often than not, I get more attention than maybe a darker skinned woman would.
Not necessarily, no. Not while I've been in college. In high school, maybe, because I auditioned for like a lot of choirs where a lot of whites had auditioned for, and that was the only situation that I feel like I've been discriminated against.
Well, since I'm dark skinned and me being discriminated against to a light skinned person, I don't think so. But to a white person, hell yeah.
Certain derogatory, like, oh, what you talking about? You almost white. You ain't even black.
And it's that very blatant thievery of my identity that massively offends me. Because you think automatically that since I'm butterscotch bright, reflecting honey dip light, that it gives me the right to think that I'm white. But your judgments can't define me, because I never claimed to be better than, but just as equal to, because I'm just as black as you. And you've been given no authority to refer to me so casually as either red bone, yellow, or white.
Do you feel that Hollywood or the media helps to perpetuate this stereotype?
Yes, I do. I think the stereotype is really perpetuated right now in the music videos. You can see it with the type of women that are, you know, the stereotypical video girls. You can also see it in, you know, some movies that there's a difference between, you know, like if you think about The Color Purple in the 1980s when that came out, and just how Celie felt about herself in comparison to Suge Avery.
Yes, because of the roles that people are cast in, more so with female black actresses. They tend to be fair skinned, who usually make it more, you know, go further in their career. And then with the men, because of dominance and masculinity, they're usually darker skinned. So for success rate, you know, for the success rate of actors and actresses in the black media, I think that lighter skinned women make it further and darker skinned men make it further.
Most definitely. If you even look on videos that we have today, and the girls who are these video girls, they're all lighter skin complected. I see very few darker skinned African American females on these videos, or even when you look at the media in terms of who's giving you your media. I've never really seen a dark skinned African American.
Oh, I think Hollywood is, and the media in general, the visual media in general, are some of the worst perpetrators of it. From the days of the 1800s and the 30s and 1800s and 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up into the 1940s, when the minstrel show was such a popular form of entertainment, and the darker skinned stereotype in the minstrel shows, and you see this in 1917's Birth of a Nation, the most dark skin are the closest to the ape-like animal, stupid, childish behavior. And today in Hollywood, or actually since the 1930s in Hollywood, when black actresses, African-American actresses, much more so than actors, were given roles of the tragic mulatto, the light-skinned woman who did not know where she belonged because she was neither black nor white, and often came to a terrible end. That was true in silent movies, that was true in sound movies, and that's certainly true today when you see so many of the prominent actresses who have romantic relationships with darker-skinned black actors or across ethnic lines with white actors. It's the Halle Berry syndrome, the Vivica Fox syndrome. The people who are the closest to the color of the majority in the audience are the safest exceptions. And I think that Hollywood, television, all the visual media have not only perpetuated that, but exploited it for as long as there's been a visual media.
I think Hollywood helps to perpetuate a lot of stereotypes, seeing as how light-skinned black women are seen as more beautiful or more to the norm. They look more like white women or closer to white women. So Hollywood wants to use that in films because who wants to see Grace Jones or, you know, the only dark women that you see also fulfill this image. You know, if they're dark-skinned women, then they have to have the long hair and they have to, you know, have this proper etiquette that is like assimilating to some other image, like Naomi Campbell. So I can't say that it's all light-skinned women that are in Hollywood and they're making these movies, but those are the only ones I see in these big-time movies, like Halle Berry and, gosh, I know everybody uses Halle Berry, but there's so many other actresses and actors, light-skinned actors besides Denzel Washington, that are out there.
What does the term passing mean?
Passing has always meant those people who were born so light-skinned and so European-featured that they could cross over into white society undetected and survive with more flexibility and more mobility and better chances at economic stability. And quite often the most light-skinned of the slave owners' children would be given some money and sent to Europe or to the North so that they could blend into society. Now that still is a problem today when the United States Census, for instance, allows people to claim more than one ethnic identity on the census form, which means that people have to sit down and decide what are the benefits and what are the negativities of choosing an ethnic identity. And as was true in slavery, it's true today in the 21st century. Most people who can make that choice successfully and effectively choose to be white.
Outcast by society, I'm just another casualty of the slave mentality's legacy passed down over centuries, from the foundation to the slick manipulation of the house and field nigger segregation. I'm a direct adaptation. Understand my frustration.
But would you pass for another race to acquire something?
No.
Why not?
First, I can't pass for another race.
If you could.
If I could, no. I'm proud of me. I'm proud of who I am, so I wouldn't want to perpetrate something that I'm not.
I would, but I probably got a bogus interpretation of that, because I would be like, well, all people came from Africa, so in a sense, yeah, I am Puerto Rican, I am Indian, I am all of that.
Never. I think that is a form of, some people just do it for the money, but I would think it's a form of self-hatred, and I love being black. So even if it was for $1 million and say I could pass for being, I don't know, Puerto Rican, which I couldn't do it.
Would I?
Yes.
Yes. Could I? No.
Why would you?
I don't know, it's a survival of the fittest, you know, it's like, if I could say that I was an African and get a whole bunch of land, you know, I would. If I could say that I was a European and get a whole bunch of land, I mean, it's my personal, you know, it's my personal agenda. I mean, I think everybody, you know, that's like a really philosophical question, but I think that everybody just fundamental. It's like asking the question: if you found $1 million on the ground, would you pick it up and take it, or would you, you know, try to turn it in to the police and be like, hey, you know, here's some money for you. Here go $1 million I found in the bag, you know what I mean? Nah. Morally, you would say, yeah, I'm gonna... See, the thing is, though, is even morally, you would know that giving it to a bogus-ass system, like, you know, like the police and that structure would be bogus to even give it to them. So you wouldn't do that. You'd keep it for yourself.
No.
Why not?
Well, I'm happy being who I am. I'm happy being black. I'm happy with my complexion, my hair type. I'm just happy with everything that encompasses Courtney. And everything, like, the black African-American culture to me is one of the best cultures I've ever viewed or studied, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world.
If it acquired me $1 million check, I'll do it, but as long as it has something to do with being black. They say they be like, if you white, I couldn't say it because I'm black, but they say you Jamaican, I'd be like, yeah, man, now give me the dope.
No, I don't think I would be able to. I don't think so.
No, not if you could pass or not, but if they were letting you pass, would you do it to acquire something?
I think I would.
You would?
I think I would. If it's to help me.
Yes, you.
If it's to help me.
Like if SIU is giving out scholarships to white people and you can pass for white, would you take that scholarship?
I would, yeah. If they couldn't see the difference between my skin and a white person, I would, and I would just be overcoming them, and that would be helping me to further my education.
Of course not. I love being black. I love being African American. I love our history. I think we are some of the strongest people in the world, and I would not deny that.
Do you use the word nigger?
Yeah, but I use it as a term of expression, as a positive reinforcement, you know, to try to help motivate my people. It's not used as a negative thing to me, but as long as it's used, you know, just to uplift and just using positive reinforcement, that's when I would use a term. But I would never use a term to, you know, to try to slander, you know, my race or anything like that.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
You think it's okay to use that word?
No. I have actually cut down on using that word, but as of now, I still do use that word. I don't use it as often as I did when I was in high school, but I think as I progress, I will not use that word at all.
At times, yes.
Yes.
I work very diligently to not. Now, at a different period of time in my life, I could say that I used it more, but I have never been a person that used it very much because my parents taught us to not use that. But in the last 25 years plus, I have come to struggle strongly to rid that from my vocabulary because I'm a parent and I didn't want my child to grow up using the term. And now, I mean, it's something I rarely, if ever, use. So I don't care for it.
Yes, I do.
I think we all do. I think that there's a complexity rather, not a complication, a complexity of what the word means, the context it's used in, and whether or not it's being used in a negative way or a term that is just popular and pretty much neutral. But I do believe that the term over time and used heavily tends to reinforce feelings of insecurity and alienation. Now, I have always had a personal theory that one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons black people have used nigger among themselves as a put down or a negative identification is that the common behavior that term usually applies to in the old days, especially in the South, was always associated with another very negative term in the black community, poor white trash. That black people usually had higher internal social standards of behavior, and then when they really wanted to put somebody down, they would talk about acting in niggerish ways, which usually translated into acting like, as my grandmother would have said, poor white trash.
Do you think that it's worse to be discriminated against by black people within your race or by another race?
It's worse to be discriminated by black people within your race because we are the minority already and we already look down upon by other races, so why should we look down upon ourselves?
I think racism is racism, regardless of if it's coming from your own group or if it's coming from an outside group.
Oh, I think it's much less than. Because after I have called you a negative term, I have no power to change your life. But when other races look upon you and really see you as substandard, inferior, and beneath their civilized gaze, they can go back and pass laws or make judgments about you and your future and your abilities to survive based on whether or not they think you really are an exceptional person, not like all other black people, or truly a common nigger. And they have put laws and practices into place to reinforce their definitions of us.
I think it's equal to racism is the same all around, no matter who's doing it, blacks, whites. If they're doing it intraracial or interracial, it's all racism.
Do you feel like the problem between light-skinned and dark-skinned blacks is a major issue in the black community?
I think it's an issue, yes. When you have like the different classes or whatnot within a race like African Americans, we have different classes within our race, and I think it's an issue. Yes.
Do you think that it will always be an issue?
Yes.
That's really hard to say right now.
I think it's already an issue. I think that a lot of women feel bad about their complexion. It starts when they're younger. Like I said again, my daughters are a lot darker than I am, and they get it a lot. They don't understand why, you know, they don't have the long hair, or they're darker than the other girls, so they don't get as much attention. So I think it starts as a kid. Kids can be very harsh to each other, and they have to realize that beauty is in all colors and shapes, but they usually don't. And it comes from the parenting too.
This is a huge issue in the black community, just for the simple fact that a lot of black people, we go out, we killing each other, gang banging and stuff like that, and that's worse than any type of discrimination or racism.
Do you think this will always be a problem?
Yes, it will always be a problem as long as there's hatred in the world.
Yes. Unfortunately, I feel that it is, although at the same time I think that there's a lot of progress that has been made in my lifetime, but we have a long way to go because people your age and younger still are struggling with this issue. And so to me it's kind of disappointing that given when I was born, that this is still an issue for us in 2005, when there's so many other things that we need to be dealing with as a people, as a race of African people, as people of color, and then as human beings in general.
Do you think it will always be a problem in the black community?
Not necessarily. I don't think it will necessarily, but I think in my lifetime, unless I get to be like Methuselah and live 900 years, I don't think I'll see what I would like to change in my lifetime. But I think, you know, maybe in my great-great-great-great-grandchildren's lifetimes, if we're not exploded due to nuclear weaponry or something like that, it's a chance it could change. But I think Ntozake Shange said it very well for a person like me who happens to be a female. Anyone sing a Color Girl song, and she doesn't know herself, help her to know herself, and so forth. I believe that as generations get to know themselves better, and as we get to deal with pioneering work like that by Naeem Akbar, we'll be able to come to grips with some of this mental disorientation we have about color in the black community. So I do believe there's hope.
Yes, I do think that that is an issue that we have struggled for so long with. You know, it's just basically the attitude that light-skinned blacks, you know, have been known to have. They feel as if they're better. They feel as if, you know, they're prettier, they're more attractive, and they can get through life a lot easier. I think it's a really, really big issue, but it's going to take both light-skinned and dark-skinned blacks to come together and try to solve it, or else we're going to be doomed to failure.
Oh, I think it's going to change. I think that the more we understand the pain and the confusion and the distractions that color coding brings into our community, I think the more we understand the real implications of that, the better educated we are to the pain that it causes. I think we'll be moving away from it more and more and more.
It will always be a problem in the black community if only no one talks about it. I mean, it's being discussed, or it has been discussed, like in the early 90s, but only amongst academics. And I don't think it was really in the community. I mean, Spike Lee did it, and people went to go see the movie, but did it really get into the brains of the people? I mean, and there are children that are coming up now that probably have not seen School Days or do not understand that, the ideas behind that film. And so it's only the academics that are talking about it. And what about the people outside of that, people in the community? So if it's not going to be talked about, it's not going to be solved. And I don't think it'll ever come up. I really don't.
I think it's something that we need to work on as a whole, in uniting ourselves as a people. You know, we've split ourselves into so many different tribes, and us being, you know, light-skinned, dark-skinned, church-going, non-church-going, Greek-affiliated or non-Greek-affiliated, Afrocentric, or, you know, not. I think as a people we need unity, we need love.
Do you think this will always be a major issue?
I have faith that it won't.
So it shouldn't matter if I'm a caramel-coated mocha mix of Cajun spice with a golden twist, or a cocoa beige, almond glazed, honey roasted Hershey kiss. There are no degrees of blackness if you are from African descent. While some mirror the original, others are more uniquely blended.